Welcome back to the Flip Side of Death podcast. I'm your host, Lynn Stone. And I have to apologize. I took a couple weeks off. I was traveling with family and visiting family and friends. So need to take a little hiatus, but I am back. And I also apologize if you can hear the noise in the background. It's my little air conditioning unit for my space because it's hot as Hades up here. And it's too much. So I needed something to kind of balance it out. So today I wanted to talk about green burials. And you might think, well, why in the world are we just jumping right into that? But we're jumping into that because I saw something today talking about Georgia laws. And as I think I had shared with all of you before, I currently live in Georgia. So this directly affects me. And I thought it was very interesting. It was a list of all of the Georgia laws that went into effect effective July 1st. So I'm a little behind the ball, but again, I did take off a couple weeks. So we'll just chalk it up to that. But today I want to talk a little bit about green burials. And so I have talked about that briefly previously on this show, and it was in regards to some of the planning that people would be doing and the preparation on the forms that you'd be filling out. And so you might wonder, well, what is a green burial? What does that mean? And so I had to look it up. So I had an official definition. But a green burial or a natural burial is an eco-friendly alternative to traditional funerals that allow a body to decompose naturally. It eliminates the use of toxic embalming fluids, metal caskets, and concrete vaults. Instead, remains are placed in biodegradable shrouds or untreated wood coffins and interred directly into the earth. So I thought this was kind of cool. This is something well before the market, consumerism, and all those fun things came into play with the creation of caskets and really just the whole business of funerals in general. I mean, think about this for a minute. How did they do back in the 1700s? Well, they probably didn't do much of anything other than put you in a pine box and bury you. Or they might not even have done that. So if you think about some of the wars or different situations where there were mass casualties, so I'm thinking wars, but there were also, if you think about like the Indians and the settlers, whenever they came and there were massacres, and so there were large groups of people that were buried and they were just put in shallow graves or whatever. So this whole concept of you have to be in a casket and you have to be in a concrete lined space and you have to have all these things, like that is a relatively new concept. And, for those people that are not about consumerism in that regard or are concerned about the financial aspect of the funeral process, or just really don't care and don't want their family to have a major expense, or they just want to be one back with the earth, this might be something that you might want to think about. And so, in thinking about that, of course, you can't just do this anywhere. A lot of the cemeteries that are around are generally set up for the current status, right? And this current status is you have a concrete vault, you have a casket of some sort, like a metal casket that's sealed and all those things and all the requirements, as far as depth and width. It doesn't necessarily have to be like that for green burials or natural burials, but what you do have to look at is the rules of the cemetery. So there are some hybrid cemeteries that are traditional that might offer natural burial sections that you could use. There are some that are designated as natural burial grounds. And then there's conservation burial grounds that actively fund land preservation. So this is the attempt to save space. And as you know, there are cemeteries everywhere, and there are tons of people that are buried there, and the tombstones and the headstones and all of the things. When you really think about the amount of money that has been put into preserving memories, if you will, I mean, there's a lot of money that's wrapped up into that. And, I can say when my husband passed away, it was $10,000 easily to bury him. But we did it in a cemetery, and their rules were that you had to have a vault, they had to be in a casket, and all that stuff. Now, to be fair, I didn't ask them if they had natural burial options because that really just wasn't an option. Something else to consider is if you're interested in the natural burial you don't want the cost associated with it. So you could do cremation, but you maybe aren't necessarily interested in the getting burned part, which there are some people, there are a lot of people that are like that. I think I've talked before about my dad and his thing, which by the way, I come to find out later that that is no longer the case, which I thought was very interesting. But as we age and we are exposed to different things and we change our minds, and that's one of the glories of being able to age and have an opinion on things. So if you're thinking about that, but you really don't like the idea of being burned and having ashes, then maybe this is an alternative that you would be willing to consider. So I thought that was really cool. There is actually a lady I follow on Facebook, and of course, I can't think of her name at the moment, but she has been going around to the different areas that are considered natural burial grounds or conservation burial grounds or so on and so forth. And she has been just kind of checking those out and really just bringing them to light. So if I can remember who this lady is, I'll definitely tag her in this, because I think what she does is really cool. And I really think that it just brings light to this as an option. We only know what we have been told, right? And you only think about, well, if someone dies, they have to be buried or they get cremated. That's just how it is. And it's not entirely wrong, but I think when we think of buried, we think of you go in a casket and it has to be lined and sealed, and you got all the fabric on the inside and so on and so forth. And that doesn't necessarily have to be the case. And so I thought that was really cool. Just a different way to think about things. And I thought that it was worth sharing. And I really thought it was interesting that it's actually legal. So green burials or natural burials are legal in all 50 states. You do have to, of course, check with the different places to make sure if they have space for natural burials, if that's what you're interested in. And of course, like I said earlier, this was something that was brought on by Georgia, updating their law on natural burials or green burials. So now they are officially fully legal in Georgia. And I'm reading again. The state law does not mandate embalming, concrete vaults, or metal caskets, making natural burials broadly accessible. Additionally, and I think I've talked about this one as well, human composting or natural organic reduction is a legal disposition option in the state, overseen by the State Board of Funeral Service. So I thought that was cool because that was something I've also talked about. And I believe it is something that's on the checklist to think about as an option. And that was about human composting. And what does that mean? Well, human composting is when they put the cadaver in with hay and everything breaks down naturally. And as that happens, you basically become compost. And then you can be put into the farm, you can put it into the garden, you can be put wherever. So I don't know. I mean, it's just an interesting concept. And I really like, I mean, of all the times to be alive, now is probably one of the most amazing times because there's so much information that is available to us. And I think it's so cool that we have these opportunities to really think about and consider all of the options. So think about this. If you are an avid gardener, you don't really like the idea of filling up a cemetery and you really don't want to be cremated, maybe this is an option for you. Maybe being turned into compost and being put in the garden is what you want. And that way you're one with the flowers and back to dust, right? You back to earth just as you are. So I don't know. I think that's pretty cool. Some more reading here. So navigating green burials in Georgia involves several specific legal and logistical details. So embalming is not required by state law. If a viewing is desired, many providers use refrigeration or Green Burial Council approved eco-friendly non-toxic fluids. So I would assume that those are also used for, minus the refrigeration piece, but used for the human composting part as well. Burial vaults. State law does not require vaults. While some traditional cemeteries require them to prevent ground settling, natural burial grounds and certified hybrid cemeteries specifically prohibit vaults. Human composting. Legalized in Georgia, this process gently transforms remains into nutrient-rich soil over 30 to 45 days. The resulting soil can be used by families or donated to conservation projects. So that's what we were talking about. You just decompose and turn into compost. And then biodegradable containers. Remains must be buried in biodegradable caskets. And this could be or could include pine, wicker, cardboard, or cloth shrouds like cotton or wool. And so back to the lady that I follow on Facebook, she shows um, some of these people that have chosen to do the natural burials, and they're wrapped in like cotton, like you can't see them. The body looks like it's wrapped up, like they're posed and then wrapped up in this cloth. And then, but you can't see anything, but they have flowers or stuff with them, and they do the service. It's just outside, and they put them in this grave space, and that's where they're at. And I mean, it's just very interesting concept because it just goes against everything that we've been told, right? Everything that we thought this was how it was supposed to be. So I wanted to share that. If there's one that you're interested in, that you're thinking about, you would just reach out to them and find out what their bylaws are and what their requirements are, and then you can go from there. But, it might be an even cheaper option than cremation, really. Yeah, I'm kind of all over the place, and that's okay. So the other thing I wanted to talk about was the importance of hospice. So there are people I know, and they have had situations in their family where a parent is struggling. So there's two in particular I'm thinking of. One is in my family. She was not doing well, and so it got to a point where she was done fighting, and so they had decided that they would go ahead and put her into a hospice house. But it's certainly an option for if you don't necessarily want to die at home. That's something that you could identify in your plans. So for your advance directive, your 5 wishes, whatever documents you choose to fill out, you can say, I want to go to hospice. And this is the point that I want to go to hospice. Like if I'm to the point where I can't feed myself, I can't care for myself, or I'm becoming too much for my family or the caregivers, that I want hospice to come. There's a lot of misconception about hospice. When you think about hospice, you think that it's the very end. And I thought this too. I thought that that was how it was. That's how you only ever hear about when it's at the end. But I have met a lady, and she's a very sweet lady. I was hoping I could have her on the show, and eventually I might get her here. But she was educating people about hospice. And she had said that you don't have to be dying to go to hospice. You might need help if you need to have surgery, or if you hurt yourself, like you fall and break a hip or something and you need some care, like some in-home care or whatever. Hospice can come and help you. Those servicers are not just for those who are dying, it's also for those who just need help and need support. And really, my understanding, based on what she was telling me, is that you don't have to wait until they're actively dying to call in hospice. So whenever you're thinking about your advanced directives and your 5 wishes or whatever, you can kind of articulate at what point you want hospice to be called in. And so that brings me to the other person. So I don't know this person directly. I know of them, and I get kind of know the situation. So the dad of this person was diagnosed with ALS. Their body just started shutting down. They were cognitively totally there, but their body was shutting down. And it got to the point where he couldn't do anything for himself. He lost the ability to control his body. And so the guy's kids were adult children, were helping to take care of him and sitting with him and being with him. And so this is actually like kind of like a friend of a friend type situation. And a friend keeps telling me they're not doing well, and it sounds like he's getting ready to die. He's not able to eat. He's not going to be able to swallow soon. And I said, has the family called in hospice? And my friend said no. Apparently, the dad, the guy that's the patient, doesn't want hospice. And I said, well, maybe the family needs to call in hospice, if for nothing else, just to have the support, to have a nurse, to have access to the medications, to have just the support that hospice brings to that process. And so I don't think that ever happened. My understanding is that the guy just passed away recently, and of course the family is sad as we would expect. But it's just something to think about. I know a lot of people don't know a whole lot about hospice, and I do plan to get someone on here, hopefully the lady that I had become friends with, so that she can tell you about hospice and the best time to pull it in. But until then, it's just something to think about. So as you're doing your planning, as you're updating your documents, as you're doing all of the things, um, consider this new information with about green burials or natural burials, and also consider about timing of hospice. At what point do you want support? Do you want to tough it out to the very end? Or whenever things start taking a turn, is that when you want to call them in and let them help support the family that's there left to take care of you? Because we just don't know. We don't know what tomorrow brings. We don't know what issues we're going to have. And so, I mean, your documents can change. They're not concrete once you write them. This is a fluid process, but at least getting your wishes on paper now, and then you can revisit it to make sure that your mind hasn't changed. So, just something to consider. But I'll leave you with that. And then next week, hopefully, you have a little bit more information to share with you, another topic, or maybe a guest even. I'm working on it. So I've got a lot of great people lined up that I'm going to talk to. I just don't know if it'll be next week, but regardless, I will get them in front of you at some point so that you can meet them and learn from them. If there's something that you would like me to talk about or something you have a question about that you'd like me to go into, please share that with me. Put it in the comments. Send me an email. I'll put my stuff on there. Send me a message on Facebook. I'm on my podcast page is on Facebook. My author page is on Facebook. So reach out to me. Send me a DM and let me know what it is that you're interested in. What can I tell you? What can I inform you and educate you on? Or just focus more on? Or what kind of specialist would you like me to talk to share information? Because I'm doing this to share and to spread information and to educate people about death planning and getting everyone on the right page. But if there's something in particular that you're wondering about, let me know. And then I'll definitely dive into that and we'll get it figured out. So, with that, as you all know, death is inevitable, chaos is optional. And I'll catch you the next time on the flip side of death.